Hey, Gayvon. I hope you are doing well. I just wanted to walk you through what I thought could be a good plan for finishing up the week. Um, First of all, I want to apologize. So we sort of realized that while this project may have worked in school, it's kind of too much for for remote learning. So we're cutting down on some things. You'll see I removed sources from the bottom of your sheet, and we're going to extend it so people have the time that they need. That being said, I really think that you can finish. You really just have two more sources to read. And I think you can finish this week so that next week you can work on like putting your things in your outline and getting going with that. So um, so I think today you should read one source, and I'm actually going to read it through you. If you want to watch me read it, go for it. If you are like, oh my God, that sounds terrible, then that's fine. You can just stop the video after I show you what I mean and read it yourself. You'll see it's a Newsela article for source 3. And this source is Loving v. Virginia, the court case that made interracial marriage legal. So what you're going to take notes on with this and then this other one, which is about a different court case, is just like the who, what, when, where, why of the case, like what happened, and can you see like how does this show the impact of court cases? So these are going to be these examples, these historical examples will end up being your evidence when you go to write, because it shows that in the past people have used the court to make positive change. So it says, Richard Loving was a white man, Mildred Jeter was a Black woman. In 1957, they broke a Virginia law by getting married. At that time, most states did not allow Blacks and whites to marry. Honestly, that's a pretty good summary of the case of the setup. So I might just copy that here, right? And you'll do that throughout because you already have the who, where, and when. So now all you need to know is like what happened with the case. So you can find a quote or explain what happens with the case. So the Lovings took their case to the U.S. Supreme Court. It is the highest court in the United States. The court ruled that the Virginia law was against the U.S. Constitution. The court said that the state could not prevent Black people and white people from marrying. Loving v. Virginia was the name of their case. Many say it helped to end the struggle. It helped at the struggle to end Jim Crow laws in the South. These were laws that separated Blacks and whites or segregated them. So I already see a really good quote there that you might be able to pull that shows something about why using the courts was effective or how it created change. So if you want, pause the video and see if you can pop that in your notes. Richard and Mildred Loving. Richard Loving and Mildred Jeter lived in Central Point, Virginia. He was a white construction worker. She was African American and Native American. They were old friends who fell in love. In June 1958, they got married in Washington, D.C. It was legal there. And then they returned home to Virginia. About 5 weeks later, the Lovings were arrested by the police. The couple pleaded guilty. A judge convicted them and sentenced them to 1 year in prison. However, there was a way to avoid jail, the judge said. They must leave Virginia and not return together for 25 years. The Lovings moved to Washington, D.C. and had 3 children. Still, they longed to return to their hometown. In 1963, the American Civil Liberties Union agreed to help them. The ACLU is a major civil rights group. The Loving v. Virginia Supreme Court case. The Lovings asked a judge to overturn their conviction. He refused. In 1967, the United States Supreme Court heard the case. The ACLU said the Virginia law was against the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. The amendment said the law must treat people fairly. Says the law cannot discriminate. That's called equal protection. That's equal protection under the law. Why the 14th Amendment is my favorite amendment, even though a lot of them are really good. One of the ACLU lawyers was called Philip Herkshopp. He said Virginia's marriage law was racist. These are slavery laws, he said. The Supreme Court announced their ruling on June 12, 1967. All the Supreme Court justices agreed. They said the Virginia law was against the Constitution. Earl Warren was the Chief Justice. Everyone can decide who they want to marry and live with, he wrote. States do not have the right to decide. The legacy of Loving versus Virginia. The Lovings returned to Central Point. Richard Loving was killed in 1975 in a car crash, that said. Mildred Loving spent the rest of her life in Central Point. She died in 2008. Loving v. Virginia was an important victory for civil rights. In 2015, the Supreme Court made gay marriage legal. The justices brought up Loving v. Virginia. They said that the case showed that marriage is a human right. June 12th is Loving Day. The holiday marks the anniversary of Loving v. Virginia's decision and celebrates multiracial families. So I think in here, there's maybe another piece of evidence or another thing that sort of suggests why this is a really important case and what it shows about Supreme and why it's a good example of court cases being used for social change. I think if you grab that, take an extra note, and then really what you'll have to do is just fill out this top part where you're like copying and pasting and writing the source information. So hopefully that works and you can get to do this source today and then this last source on Friday, because if that's the case, then you'll be in really great shape for next week, okay? Oh.